All right, so the front of your test is going to be the formula sheet, except the formulas are going to be missing. So the first thing you'll have to do is write out your formulas for areas and circumference. Then, at that point, if you want me to, I will check all your formulas and fix them if they're wrong, so that you have the right formulas going into the back of the test, which is going to look just like this review sheet, just kind of a list of questions. Okay? So if you have the wrong formulas, you're going to get these wrong because you'll be working from wrong information. So if you want me to, after you fill out all your formulas, I'll just grade the front of your test, and then you'll have the right stuff to go off of for the back side. So on the back side, it'll look like this, a list of questions. It says to make sure to show all your work and box in your answer so I can find them easily. And it says if units are given, be sure to include them in your answer. I'm going to expect them. It will be worth points to have the right units there in your answer. Then to make sure that you give all required measurements, if it asks for more than one thing, to make sure that you give everything that's asked for. So as I read through the questions, I kind of mark them up to remind myself of some important things. So whatever it tells me to find, I underline. So that if it tells me to find more than one thing, I make sure that when I'm done, I look back at what's underlined and that I found all of the things that are underlined. You don't have to do this. This is just what works for me to make sure, and it may work for you. Another thing is sometimes you're going to have to find something that you aren't exactly asked for, kind of as a middle step. And for me, always, as soon as I get an answer, I feel like I'm done with the question. And so this is just a good way for me to check and make sure that I actually found what they asked me for. So in this one, we want to find the area of a square. So I'm going to draw a square with a perimeter. I can't really label that in the picture, so I'm just going to list out that I have a perimeter of 44, and there's a unit there. So I'm going to circle that unit so that when I get to the end of this problem, it will hopefully remind me that I need to make sure that that unit's in my answer as well. So now perimeter of a square. How would I find the perimeter of the square?
Divide 44 by 4.
If I divide 44 by 4, that'll give me the side, because in a square all the sides are the same. So the perimeter would be equal to 4 times whatever that side is. And I could divide out by 4, and that would give me how big a side of the square is. So a side of this square is 11. But if I looked at what I was underlined, it didn't ask me to find how big a side of the square was. It asked me to find the area of the square. So what is area of a square?
Base times height.
Base times height, or since they're the same, we can just square the one thing that we have and get 121. Now I circled a unit there to remind me that I need to put a unit in this answer as well. What unit do I need? Centimeters squared. Area is always in square units. Questions on that one? The next one says find the area. So I'm going to underline area so I make sure I find the right thing. Of a rectangle. So draw myself a rectangle. A width of 3 and a diagonal of 5. There were no units, so I don't need a circle, and I won't need to have units in my answer then. What is the formula for area of a rectangle? Length, width, base, height, something like that, whatever letters we happen to use. So in this problem, we know the width is 3, but we don't know what the length is. So how would I find that length? The Pythagorean theorem, since this is a rectangle, has right angles, so we can use our Pythagorean theorem there and say 3 squared plus length squared equals 5 squared. So that's 9 plus our length squared would be 25. Subtract out, so length squared is 16. And our length is then 4. So going back to our area formula, length is 4. And we were given width is 3. So 12. Box it in so it's easy for me to find what you intend to be your final answer. There were no units, so I don't need to include them. Super common student mistake is to write 12 squared, thinking about units still being there, but 12 squared is a totally different thing than 12. right? So when we have units and we say that it's centimeters squared, that's just the unit that's being squared. It's not the number. So if there's no unit there, there shouldn't be a squared there either. Okay, so it's just 12. Questions on that? So for both of these questions, we had kind of a middle step where we needed to find something to use in our formula that we weren't given. That wasn't technically part of our answer, but we needed it to get to our answer. The next question says find the area of a trapezoid with bases of 4 and 12 and height should always be a vertical thing, of 7. No units in this question. What is the area of a trapezoid formula? Half of the height times the sum of the bases. A trapezoid is kind of like a triangle, so a triangle is 1/2 base times height, but a trapezoid has 2 bases because it's like a triangle with its top cut off, so we're going to add up those bases. Okay, so a trapezoid is 1/2 the height and the sum of the bases. So we know everything we need, so we can just plug it straight in. 1/2, height 7, bases of 4 and 12. And it doesn't matter which one you call base 1 and base 2, because when you add, 4 plus 12 is the same thing as 12 plus 4. So operations, the first thing you do is add up and get 16. And then 1/2 times 7 times 16 is 56. Questions on that?
Do we need to show like all of our work just exactly like that, or can it be?
You don't need to show all of your work, but as much work as you can show me gives you a greater chance of partial credit if something goes wrong. Okay, but if you just wrote down the original formula and then equals 56, that's fine. Then I would know that you had the formula right and arithmetic went wrong somewhere, so you don't necessarily need to show that second step with the 16. All right, the next question talks about a rhombus, and we're not doing stuff with a rhombus, so we can just cross that question out and go on to question 5. So there won't be anything about a rhombus. Number 5 then says, find the area of a right triangle with legs of 21 and 12 meters. I have a unit there, so I'm going to circle it so don't forget about it at the end. What are the legs of a right triangle? The perpendicular sides. So the hypotenuse is a special thing across from the right angle, and the legs are the other ones. So one of them is 21 and one of them is 12. What is the formula for area of a triangle? A half base times height. Do I know the base and the height in that picture? Yeah, the base and the height should always be perpendicular to each other, and that's what the legs are. So by giving us the legs, they gave us the base and the height, and it doesn't matter which one is which, because when you multiply, 21 times 12 is the same thing as 12 times 21. So we multiply that all together, and we get what? What do we get? What is it? 126? And we need a unit, so meters squared. You don't have to mark up your questions the same way I do, but I suggest that you in some way do something to remind yourself of when you need units, because they are really easy to forget about. The next one says find the area of a circle with a diameter of 16, and there's a unit there, inches. What's the formula for area of a circle? Pi times radius squared. Do we know the radius? The radius will be 8, so we weren't given the radius, but a radius is half of a diameter. So pi times 8 squared. And like we did in the homework, we're just going to let the pi's hang out in our answers. So we're just going to do 8 squared is 64, and the pi just tags along. Then I have a unit circled, so I need a unit in the answer. So what unit do I need? Inches squared. Area is always going to be a square unit, no matter what the shape is. Questions on that one? Okay, number 7, find the area of a circle with a circumference. I can't really label that in the picture, so I'll just write it out. Circumference is 14 pi, and there is a unit, so I need to make sure that I put a unit in the answer. All right, we're asked for area, but we're given circumference. What's the circumference formula? 2 pi times the radius. So we don't know the radius of this circle, but we can use this equation to solve for it. How would I solve for r? Divide by the 2 pi on both sides. And the pi's all cancel. And I'm left with 14 divided by 2, which is 7 is our radius. But if I look back to what I underlined, I wasn't asked to find the radius. I was asked to find the area. So that's why I underline what I have to find, because otherwise, once I get an answer, I'm always tempted to just stop a question and think, well, I got an answer. But it's not the answer I was asked for here. So area is pi radius squared. And now that we know our radius, we can plug it in. 7 squared is 49, so we get 49 pi. And I circled a unit, so I need a unit in the answer. Centimeters squared. All right.
Instead, you use the formula of circumference equals pi times diameter.
You could use the formula of circumference equals pi times diameter. Still going to have to work your way to the radius for the area formula. So that would be fine to use, instead of the 2 pi r, use pi d, and we would have found that diameter is 14. We're still going to have to break that down to radius being 7 to plug into area. For number 8, we're looking for the area of a sector of a circle. We're given our radius is 5, and our angle, which in our formula was x, is 75. And what was that formula for the area of a sector? Close. Squared. Yep. X over 360 tells us we're working with just a part of the circle. The whole circle is 360. X is our part of it. And then since we're talking about area, area is pi r squared. So we have our full area formula there, but then we're multiplying it by just a portion of the circle. We know everything we need to be able to plug into this. X is 75. And r is 5. So on the calculator, we would do 75 times 5 squared, and then divide that by 360. And these numbers didn't actually work out very nicely. So we just get that it's 5.2083 repeating, and that pi just tags along. Questions on that one? All right, the last one, find the arc length of a part of a circle where we have an angle, which is our x, and area of 40 pi. So we're going to use our same area formula as the last question. Area is x over 360 times pi r squared. But we know x is 144. We do not know what r is, so we're going to solve for r. How do I try to get r alone? Could divide both sides by pi. That'll cancel out the pi's. So then I have 40 equals 144 over 360 times r squared. Multiply by 360, and that'll get rid of the bottom of that fraction. How do I get rid of the 144? Divide by that 144. We'll get rid of the 144. So when you do 360 divided by 144 times 40, which gives us 100, is equal to r squared. So what is r? 10. Okay, tempting to be done with the question, but if we look back to what we underlined, it said we needed to find arc length. So we're not quite done with this question. Our arc length formula is x over 360, just like area, a portion of the whole circumference, which is 2 pi r. Okay, so arc length is like circumference, so 2 pi r, but then we want just a part of it, so x over 360. So our x was 144, and we just found that r is 10. So we'll do 144 times 2 times 10 and divide by 360. And what does that give me? 8. And that pi is just tagging along. There were no units in this question, so we don't need units in our answer.
So you times 10 by...
Yep, we do all the multiplications and then just divide by the 360. So 144 times the 2 and times the 10 and divide by the 360. Yep, everything gets multiplied except for that pi and then divide by the 360. All right, questions?